The first thing people noticed about my house wasn't the porch, the mailbox, or even the old oak tree in the front yard. It was the garden. Rows of bright tomatoes climbed wooden stakes. Lavender bushes swayed gently in the warm Texas breeze. Sunflowers stretched toward the sky like they were reaching for the sun itself. Bees hummed lazily between flowers, and butterflies danced over the small stone path I had laid with my own hands. It wasn't just a garden. It was my peace. After 12 years in the Army, I moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Austin. The kind of place with identical mailboxes, trimmed lawns, and the ever-present authority of the HOA. At first, I didn't mind it. The rules seemed harmless enough. Keep the lawn mowed. Don't park RVs in the driveway. No loud parties after 10 p.m. Simple. But the garden was never mentioned. I spent months building it. Digging soil under the brutal summer sun, installing a small wooden fence, planting vegetables, herbs, and flowers my late mother used to grow when I was a kid. Every morning before work, I watered it. Every evening, I sat beside it with a cup of coffee. It reminded me of home. Then one afternoon, I found the envelope. It was taped neatly to my front door. White, official-looking, and stamped with the words, HOA violation notice. I frowned as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Unauthorized landscaping modification fine, $500. I blinked. What the hell? Just then, I heard heels clicking behind me. Sharp. Confident. I turned around. Standing at the edge of my driveway was a woman in a perfectly pressed blazer, oversized sunglasses, and the unmistakable expression of someone who thought the entire neighborhood belonged to her. She crossed her arms. "You must be the new homeowner," she said coldly. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, and you are?" She smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind that came right before trouble. "I'm Linda Whitmore, president of the HOA." Her gaze drifted toward my garden like she was staring at a pile of trash. "That," she said, pointing, "is a violation." I looked at the garden, then back at her. "You're fining me $500 for growing tomatoes?" Linda tilted her head. "Oh, honey," she said sweetly. "You have no idea how many rules you've broken." And that's when I realized. This wasn't about a garden. This was about control. The HOA war begins warning. For a moment, I honestly thought Linda Whitmore was joking. $500 for a garden? But the way she stood there, arms crossed, lips tight, staring at my tomatoes like they were a crime scene, told me she was completely serious. I held up the notice. "Look, there has to be some kind of mistake. It's just vegetables." Linda removed her sunglasses slowly, like a villain in a movie revealing their eyes. "This neighborhood has landscaping standards," she said. "Approved plants only. Approved layouts only. And most importantly," her manicured finger pointed toward my garden beds. "No food gardens visible from the street." I blinked. "You're telling me vegetables are illegal?" "Unapproved agricultural displays," she corrected. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous. "Ma'am, these are tomatoes and sunflowers. Not a farm." Her face hardened immediately. "You can mock the rules all you want," she said, "but they still apply to you." She turned and walked back toward the sidewalk. Then she stopped. "And if that garden isn't removed within 7 days, the fine will increase." With that, she left. That night, I did something Linda probably didn't expect. I read the HOA rulebook. All 84 pages of it. Page after page of lawn height requirements, fence colors, mailbox dimensions. But nowhere did it say vegetables were banned. There was one vague line about unapproved landscaping modifications. That was it. Which meant Linda was stretching the rules. Badly. The next morning, I called the HOA office. The receptionist sounded tired before I even finished explaining. "Oh, this is about the garden, right?" That caught my attention. "Yes," I said slowly. She sighed. "Linda has been enforcing that rule a lot lately." "How many people has she fined?" 3 this month. Now I was curious. "Did anyone fight it?" Another pause. Then she lowered her voice. "Most people just pay. Linda can make things difficult." I hung up and stared out my kitchen window at the garden. Bees buzzed around the lavender. The sunflowers glowed in the morning light. And suddenly the $500 fine didn't bother me anymore. What bothered me was the principal. Linda thought she could bully the whole neighborhood into submission. And apparently no one had ever pushed back. Until now. 3 days later, another envelope appeared on my door. This one was thicker. I opened it. Inside were 3 more violations. Garden structure noncompliance, $200. Fence height violation, $150. Visual nuisance complaint, $150. Total, $500, again. I stared at the paper, stunned. She had just doubled the fines. Then I noticed something else. Across the street, a curtain moved. Linda's window. She was watching, waiting to see if I'd fold. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed a number. The receptionist at the county office answered. Code enforcement, how can I help you? I smiled. Hi. I have a question about HOA authority. Because if Linda wanted a war, I was about to give her one. The meeting where everything exploded, balance scale fire. 2 weeks later, the HOA meeting room was packed. That alone told me something was different. Normally, HOA meetings in our neighborhood were about as exciting as watching paint dry. A few retirees complaining about trash bins, someone asking about streetlights, Linda running the room like a bored school principal. But tonight, every chair was filled. Neighbors lined the walls. And in the front of the room sat Linda Whitmore, perfectly dressed as always, tapping her pen against a clipboard like she was already irritated. When she saw me walk in, her eyes narrowed. I smiled politely and took a seat. The meeting started the usual way. Budget updates. Landscaping reminders. Then Linda cleared her throat. Next item, she said, glancing down at her papers. Property violation dispute, homeowner at 214 Maple Ridge Drive. That was me. She looked up. Mr. Carter, you requested to contest your fines. I stood up slowly. Yes, ma'am. Linda folded her hands on the table. You installed an unapproved vegetable garden visible from the street. Multiple violations have been issued. The fines currently total $1,000. Murmurs rippled through the room. Linda continued. The HOA board recommends removal of the garden and immediate payment. She looked at me like the case was already closed. Do you have anything to add? Oh, I said calmly. I brought a few things. I placed a thick binder on the table. Linda's confident smile flickered. Inside the binder were printed documents, highlighted sections, and photos. The result of 2 weeks of research. I opened it. First, I said, I'd like to reference Section 4.3 of the HOA Landscaping Guidelines. Linda leaned back. That section clearly prohibits unauthorized. It doesn't mention vegetables, I interrupted. A few people in the audience chuckled. Linda's smile tightened. It refers to unapproved modifications. Correct, I said. Then I slid a printed email across the table. Which is why I contacted the county. Now the room went quiet. Linda frowned. What does the county have to do with this? I looked her straight in the eyes. Texas state law protects residential food gardens from HOA bans. Someone in the crowd whispered, wait, seriously? I nodded and held up another document. Texas Property Code Section 202.020. Now the murmurs were louder. Linda grabbed the paper and scanned it quickly. Her face slowly turned pale. I kept going. An HOA cannot prohibit vegetable gardens as long as they're maintained and don't create health hazards. Someone clapped softly in the back. Linda slammed the paper on the table. That law has restrictions. Sure does, I said. Then I placed the final set of photos in front of the board. Close-up shots of my garden. Neat rows. Clean paths. Well-maintained plants. No weeds. No trash. No hazard. The board members exchanged glances. One of them leaned toward Linda. Did we check this before issuing fines? Linda's jaw tightened. It was clearly a violation. I smiled slightly. Well, the county didn't think so. Then I dropped the final bomb. Actually, I said, they were pretty interested in this case. Linda froze. What do you mean? I slid another document across the table. A formal notice from County Code Enforcement. The board member read it aloud. Complaint regarding potential HOA overreach and unlawful fines. Gasps spread through the room. Linda's face turned red. The board member looked up. Linda, did you issue these fines without verifying state law? For the first time since I met her. She didn't have an answer. And, suddenly, the woman who had controlled the entire neighborhood looked very, very nervous. When the garden won her balance scale, the room was silent. Not the polite kind of silence you get at HOA meetings. This was the kind where people could feel the balance of power shifting. The board member holding the county notice slowly set the paper down and looked at Linda. Is this accurate? He asked carefully. Linda straightened in her chair, trying to regain control. These homeowners are exaggerating, she said quickly. The HOA has every right to enforce community standards. I cleared my throat. Community standards, yes, I said calmly. State law violations, not so much. A few neighbors laughed quietly. Another board member leaned forward and flipped through the documents I had brought. The law is pretty clear, she said. HOAs cannot ban residential food gardens. She looked directly at Linda. Did you consult legal before issuing these fines? Linda's voice came out sharper this time. I've been HOA president for 6 years. I know how enforcement works. That was when the older man sitting beside her spoke up. But do you know state law? The room shifted again. You could almost feel the neighborhood realizing something important. Linda didn't actually have the power she thought she did. She had just been acting like she did. The board whispered among themselves for a moment. Then the chairman cleared his throat. After reviewing the documents and the state statute presented tonight, he paused. All fines issued regarding Mr. Carter's garden are hereby dismissed. The room erupted in applause. Not loud cheering, this was still a suburban HOA meeting, but enough to make the moment unmistakable. Linda's face looked like someone had just unplugged her authority. But the chairman wasn't finished. Additionally, he continued, the board will conduct a review of recent violations issued under this interpretation of the landscaping rule. Several neighbors immediately started talking. I placed the old 1998 survey map in my drawer with care, a reminder of how a single piece of evidence, a simple, overlooked document, could change everything. It wasn't just paper, it was my home, my fight, my victory. Sometimes, justice doesn't come easily. Sometimes, it hides in the margins, waiting for someone willing to dig, willing to stand up, willing to fight. And sometimes, just sometimes, the little guy wins. The sun set over Willow Creek, painting the neighborhood in golden light. My house, legal, standing tall and completely mine, glowed warmly in the evening. I stepped inside, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders, ready to finally breathe again. The fight was over. The house was safe. And the truth had won.